tells you why didn't nobody ever tell me this moment. Story 1, discovered a week before our family moved to a different continent that we were moving. I had to quit my job, didn't have a proper chance to say goodbye to my friends, and had to leave most of my things behind. My mom was like, we've been planning this for months, and no one told me. Story 2, relationships are hard. You'll love someone more than you knew you could most of the time, but you'll also be more annoyed by that same person at times than you knew you could. Story 3, that you have the worst month-long period of your life after giving birth. I read books, took childbirth classes, and had no idea. Not a nice surprise. Story 4, I moved from Switzerland to America 7 years ago. Most of my family didn't stay in contact with me, so it's just every few months that I hear from someone. Me, so, hey, how's Grandpa doing? Family member, he's dead. Me, what? When did he die? Family member 2 years ago. Me, the why nobody told me. At least send me an email. How is Grandma taking it? Family member, she's dead. To me, you all. Edit, it wasn't so much about my grandpa. He never wanted to talk on the phone anyway. Still, they could have told me on the phone. Still, I spoke with Grandma after he died, and I usually asked how everyone's doing since she and Grandpa had several family members living with him. She didn't say anything about him being dead, but said things that made me believe he's still alive, like him selling our car. We don't need 2 cars. When I asked what Grandpa's feelings were about that, she said Grandpa would be okay with it. Never really thought about it anymore. You should absolutely try to live your life as an honest and good person, but if you assume other people are as well, you will be over at every turn. Story 5, that someone will try to ruin your career on several occasions throughout your life. Blatant lies, taking credit for your work, thrown under the bus. I've seen it all. Story 6, until recently, I thought Sophie's Choice was a romantic comedy where a woman has to pick between 2 men or something stupid like that. I found out I was really wrong. Story 7, went rafting in Colorado last summer. 2 buddies, and I go through a briefing with about 30 other people on safety, etc. Instructors tell us all to get on the bus, so we can head up the mountain. We get on the bus, and people start piling and wearing these blue wetsuits. At this point, I'm thinking I missed something, but it was about 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and I was comfortable in my t-shirt and shorts. We get to the drop-off, and it's now about 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Due to elevation, and it starts to rain, those blue suits are looking like the way to go, but it'll be okay. We get ready to jump in our raft, and the instructor says no cotton on the raft. You will be miserable, and tells us to take off our shirts. So here we are, looking like a dumbass, scrawny, shirtless dudes on a cold mountain, in the rain, about to jump in a rapid filled with melted snow, surrounded by people in wetsuits. It was fun, but it was cold, and we got ripped on by everybody, including little kids, the instructors, and elderly. Why did nobody tell us about the wetsuits? I didn't even know where they kept them and tried to find them when we got back. If somebody would have just said, hey, grab a suit, they're over there. Story 8, if you microwave a hard-boiled egg, it will explode. If you don't microwave it too long, it won't explode until you have taken a shell off and taken a big bite. I called my mom, a 7-year-old alone at home, crying and bleeding, asking why no one ever told me an egg could turn into a bomb. Story 9, that pickles are cucumbers. I thought pickles came from pickle plants, and to pickle something was to put it in the juice of a pickle until I was 25. Story 10, a coworker was gone for a bit because his wife had a baby. I wasn't working a ton at the time, but I was around when the guy came back to work. He showed me pictures of his newborn son, and I asked him how things were going. His answers were vague until I asked a particular question, and he got a weird look on his face. He told me his son was stillborn. Nobody told me, and the baby pictures looked totally normal to me. He handled it really well, but I was horrified. Everybody was just like we thought you knew on a happier note. They ended up having perfectly healthy twin baby girls a few years later. Story 11, I was away when a friend of mine committed suicide. The first time I even heard he was dead was when his family gave me a lot of for not being at the funeral. Story 12, when I was a small kid, I went to the bank with Mom. While she was at the teller station, I roamed around the lobby and spotted a long row of light switches. Since I was always being told at home to put out lights, I reached up, put the place in darkness, and ran. No one told me that by turning off all those switches that people would think the bank was being robbed and to call the police, but that's what happened. To her credit, Mom immediately figured out that I was the culprit and got the manager to call it off, and got a good laugh out of the employees and customers too. Story 13, that renters want to know you're making somewhere between 3 to 4 times what they charge before they'll give you a place. This really pisses me off because I'm a single guy with no pets or children who could easily pay rent if they'd let me. But no, even though I can afford an apartment of my own, I still can't afford an apartment of my own. Story 14, baby onesies are designed so that you can pull the garment down over the child's shoulders and off, so that you don't smear all over your child getting the onesie off if they have a diaper blowout. Found that out after my first kid was out of the blowout stage. Story 15, that you feel heartburn in your throat and not your heart. I was 20 years old and kept getting these terrible pains in my heart thinking it was normal. Turns out my heart wasn't getting enough oxygen. Story 16, that everyone's first attempts usually. For some reason, I thought that some people were just naturally talented at painting, drawing, singing, whatever, just practice to get a bit better, or because they enjoyed it. I wish someone had told me that actually it's the practice that makes you good. Story 17 today was mandatory overtime at work. I was never ever told this company had mandatory overtime. Should be there right now. But since I have another job, oh well. Story 18, that you're supposed to wear a bra underneath a white shirt. I cringe every time I think of all the times I wore a white bra that everyone could see. Story 19, acne hurts. Why does no one ever mention this? I always heard, oh no, my acne looks so bad today. So it doesn't matter that it looks strange. It hurts a ton. Story 20, school is more about learning good study habits than learning all the bullshit they teach you. I'm 27 and still have terrible discipline. I have a really hard time with 1-3 credit class in a semester because I get bored and start doing the bare minimum to pass. Learn to study. Kids. Story 21, you're supposed to drink your margarita with salt on the rim from the glass. Not use your straw to push the salt into the cup and swirl it around. I just realized this morning, and I've been thinking about it all day. I feel so stupid. Story 22, what I just learned last week, that the eggs we eat aren't baby chickens. I am in college, and all my life I've thought that eggs would hatch if they hadn't been frozen. I'm happy to know that scrambling eggs isn't baby chicken genocide, though. I don't have to feel guilty anymore. Edit, when I said frozen, I meant put in the refrigerator. Chilled, cooled, my mind's blanking on the real word. When I realized that no one told me life would be this way, my job's a joke and broke, my love life's DOA, it's like I'm always stuck in second gear. It hasn't been my day, week, month, or even year, but it's alright because someone's always going to be there for me. Story 23, I've been using my phone outside for 6 years without realizing I could turn up the brightness to actually see the screen. I thought it was normal to not be able to see anything in sunlight. Someone told me last week to just flick up the brightness. It has changed my life. Edit, this is my most popular comment so far. Hooray. To add, I've had a succession of iPhones in this time, and always noted in reviews that people mention poor visibility outdoors, so I just assumed it was normal. I had auto brightness turned off to save on battery, and I had no idea that brightness could be used to counteract the sun. Now I know this, and my Pokemon hunting has improved immeasurably. Story 24, just a minor thing, but still, been living in this apartment for almost 2 years. Ever since I moved, and I assumed the ignition for the stove was broken. Since it never worked, bought a lighter first day, and used it ever since. 2 days ago, a man from the gas company comes by to check something and wants to see if the gas is still on. So he notices the ignition isn't on. He grabs behind the microwave and flips a switch. Viola, the ignition works now. I'm moving out Friday. Story 25, when my brother and I were toddlers. We were good friends and played with each other pretty much all day, every day. We weren't especially difficult children. So I guess there were times when my mom felt all right with leaving us alone for a few minutes while she went off to do something. There must have been, because every now and again, my brother and I would sneak into my parents' bathroom and look through the cabinets. I don't know what our goal was the first time we did this, but every time afterwards, we were after what I know now was my mother's diaphragm. I found it and thought that it was a little hat, so on my brother and I would play with it and put it on our heads and what have you until my mom found us and took it away. I think that she always tried to hide it, but each time I found it again. Now that I'm not 3, I understand why my mom was so against us putting that thing on our faces. I mean, God, TLDR, my mom's diaphragm, as it turns out, was not a tiny rubber hat. Story 26, how incredibly awful the drive from St. Louis, Missouri, to Columbus, Ohio, is. Illinois and Indiana on that stretch of I-70 are just awful. Terrible road conditions, constant slowdowns due to construction, no landscape to admire because you're surrounded by trees for 99 of the drive. It's flatter than Kansas. And there's no civilization aside from Indianapolis. That drive, that those weren't my cat's butt cheeks, they were his. I noticed one day that was gone and never forgot it. Story 27, I took dumps with the toilet seat up until about 2 years ago. I was completely shocked when I learned that I was supposed to with the seat down. I thought they were for girls to use. All that time I was sitting in dried and cold porcelain. Feels bad, man. Story 28, that numerous drugs affect birth control's ability to prevent pregnancy. Been on it since I was 13, obviously had various antibiotics prescribed to me throughout the years. You know, the doctor mentioned this until I went to Planned Parenthood for UTI antibiotics, and it said something. Eve mentioned it to other women throughout the years since I learned about it. And there have been many who were like, what? Here's a link for reference. Story 29, I wish someone told me about public hair before I started growing it. I also wish someone told me that some people trim or shave down there, because I didn't know until I was 15, and I had a massive amount at that point that I was uncomfortable with. Story 30, when I learned statics, I can't believe they don't teach everyone how forces balance. It is such a fundamental part of my everyday life now that I can't imagine a time without this knowledge. Story 31, growing up, I often missed social cues, and no one would pull me aside and point out the problem. Nowadays, I get I'm supposed to figure it out myself. But still, a nudge would have been nice. Story 32, I started college last year, and I wanted to switch programs. This meant I also have to tell my student financial aid office OSAP, because I live in Ontario. This starts off a couple months ago with me trying to contact OSAP. I was told to buy my college. They have no email, and they only have one phone number that works in province. It is only for non-applicants to get information. That's fine. I have a fax machine, and even if that doesn't work, I can mail it. A week goes by, and I get nothing back. Not even an email. I start thinking, hey, maybe something went wrong. I'll ask my college again. They say, I have to talk to my financial aid office in person 2-hour drive away. Okay, fine, I could do that. It's kind of important to be able to pay for my classes. I get the time of visit, and what do they tell me? I can't help you with this situation. Here is the email of someone higher up that might be able to help. So now I have an email of someone who might be able to help. Let's go home and ask them. Finally get home and send them an email outlining my problems, and they respond fairly quick. They're good at that when it counts. I'm told I need to start an entirely new application and that I can't just switch my current application. This scares me a bit because there were a few complications with the original application, lots of paperwork, and needed help by administration to get it all right. This all leads up to yesterday when I started a new app. Click Start New App asked me if I'm continuing in the same course or click changing done break monitor. I could have been done 2 months ago if someone just said start a new app and it asks. Moral of the story, if you live in Ontario and want to change courses, just start a new app and it will ask you. It is much easier than people might tell you. Story 33, learned at 14 years of age during an argument between my mom and father about financial support that I have a half-brother. Asked my brothers if it were true. They had known about it for years. Story 34, when I realized that my debt repayment plan had screwed up my credit rating. At school, no one ever taught us about credit ratings, but I do know how to work out a differential dx, which is useful on a daily basis. Story 35, didn't find out until I was 18 that I have Asperger's syndrome. Everyone I know knew, but didn't tell me because they were afraid I would react poorly. Story 36, when I started doing martial arts for the first time, all the boys got a cup as part of the outfit. For obvious reasons, me being the overly excited genius I was, naturally thought it was a nose protector, and proceeded to waltz over to my parents, cup over my nose, and ask them about how the heck I'm supposed to attach this thing. Not my brightest moment. Story 37, that when breastfeeding milk doesn't come out of the tip of your areola, where there's kind of hole, rather it leaks out your whole areola. Thought I had sprung some sort of leak edit by rip of areola. I meant nipple. And yes, it just kind of leaks from the areola as well as the normal old nipple part. Story 38, that gay people existed. K8 Catholic school managed to shield me from the very concept of being gay. That was a fun conversation with my high school friends. Story 39, I guess maybe this simple life advice: you're not entitled to anything. No one owes you anything. You have to work and put effort in things you want. Story 40, that American kids took on college debt to go to college. I was convinced Americans were all rich and could afford those tuition prices. It was a revelation I had some years ago, and it changed my view from America. Must be a really great place to live to America is so up. Something must be wrong with me for being so fascinated with it. Story 41, as a sophomore in college, I heard the interrupting cow knock-knock joke for the first time, tried to tell my girlfriend, only to discover she'd known about it since the 4th grade. Story 42, I'm a learner driver here in the UK, and nobody ever warned me that tests are in such high demand that when booking it, you'll be lucky if you can get one within the next 3 months. I failed my first attempt in June, which I booked in March, and the earliest date I could get for my second attempt was in October. The very fact that nobody warned me does lead me to believe this isn't normal, however. Story 43, that POS is not an actual model of car. Since seeing Men in Black as a kid, I thought it was made by Ford, unlimited technology from the whole universe. And we cruise around in a Ford POS. My boyfriend commented on Honda POS, and I told him I thought that was made by Ford. I was 24. Story 44, I was away at school, and no one told me my cousin was pregnant. I showed up to Thanksgiving, and they handed me the baby to hold. I was thinking, who the S-baby is this? But everyone was acting like I should know, so I pretended to know and had to figure out for myself. Story 45, I'm a bit late, but I thought when the nurse stuck in my arm that the needle stayed there, so I did everything in my power to hold my arm dead straight, so I wouldn't get stabbed. She saw me sitting uncomfortably, and when I told her of my concern, she informed me that the needle comes out almost immediately after it goes in, leaving just a rubber tube. that does the real forework. I have told this story to many people, and it's almost a perfect split. People in healthcare professions think I'm a total idiot, and people not in healthcare professions are shocked to find out the needle comes out. Story 46. When I was a kid, I had problems with chapped lips. They get dry. I lick them. They get even more dried out. It became a legit problem. In the end, my mom had me putting Vaseline on my lips to keep them from getting irritated. I don't know if it was because I was a kid who was over-worried about social status. I was already really low, but I wish I'd known to just use chapstick. I thought it was like lipstick only for girls, and it wouldn't help me. Story 47. A couple of years ago on my left, I was twitching horribly. As I complained to anyone who would listen, they all had the same answer: you're low on magnesium. That was the year I found out everyone around me was taking magnesium and never told me. Story 48. If you do a really good job taking care of your pet, you don't have to worry so much about coming home and finding them dead. It's more like one day you're going to have to be the one to make the decision to put them to sleep, and that's hard when all you want is just more time. Story 49. I wish my gynecologist had told me that since I was taking the pill for the first time, I could bleed like the Niagara Falls for a month. I have a lot of stomach problems, and the period usually kills my stomach. So I spent a month bleeding and throwing up and with stomach and esophagus wounds due to all the reflux I have when my stomach is bad. I could only drink Aquarius and eat rice soup, and obviously bedridden. After 2 weeks of continuous bleeding, I was going to go back to my gynecologist, but I searched online, and after a bunch of comments of girls freaking out for bleeding, so much a kind-hearted soul commented, saying that it's normal with low hormone birth control. You will bleed for a month until the birth control is capable of controlling your ovarian cycle. Seriously, gynecologists, why don't you warn women about this? Story 50. I always thought I can't sing. Turns out if you have a deep voice, you have to sing everything 1 or 2 octaves deeper. Why didn't my music teacher ever tell me this? It's his job. Story 51. Apparently my aunt had cancer. I only got told when she died. I was like 13 to 14 at the time, and I didn't see her that often, so I wouldn't notice her getting weaker and smaller from chemo. If she even took that, she didn't lose any hair, but still I loved her. All of my family knew, but not me for some reason. So, suddenly my mother walks in and tells me she died of cancer, which was really weird since I didn't even know she had cancer. Story 52. Doctors don't have a clue about herpes. Although 90% of the people who have genital HSV-2 experience no symptoms, standard protocol should not be to tell patients don't worry. There are dangers, and there are measures that can be taken against those dangers. Herpes is a non-aggressive virus which presents itself as a dryness and an itchiness similar to an ingrown hair. Do not touch that ITCH. While your body is experiencing the primary infection, your body has no antibodies to stop auto-inoculation, the act of the virus infecting a different area of the body. That virus can easily go from your itch to your eyes. When in your eyes, herpes will destroy your corneas. You will see glare, haze, and sunbursts unlike ever before. Your eyes feel dry constantly, and eye drops are useless. Yet at this time, most doctors will say that your eyes are clear, but just dry because you can still read things at 20/20. Valtrex is the only treatment that restores your vision partially, and it's worth its weight in gold. And I hate drug companies. Even using Valtrex, however, you will become one of those old people who have difficulties with driving at night. Why didn't someone tell me not to scratch that itch? I could have saved myself a lot of money for the now lifetime of supply of Valtrex I will need in order to just keep my eyesight. Oh yeah, herpes is the leading cause of blindness in the US. Didn't you know? TLDR, if you think you might catch a caught herpes, don't scratch any itch on your body, especially your eyes, for 6 months. Story 53. No one told me that my eyesight would out at 40. Younger people, please understand that we hate having to wear reading glasses and that we have no control over it. Have pity. Story 54. I knew a cousin was in prison, but didn't know about the online database that tells you what people were in for until my then boyfriend showed me to show off his stupid stepbrother's record. After having my interesting conversations, being hugged multiple times, and generally being left alone with him as a minor, I find out he did time for abusing his daughter, who is a year younger than me. Thanks, family. I could have been his victim too. Story 55. It doesn't matter how you get there. It's just that you get there. I had to learn this myself. I had the Tommy Callahan route through college, and I felt kind of ashamed that it took me that long. Then one day my friend said, look, you have a degree, and your grades weren't that bad once you got your together. It really doesn't matter if it took you a while to figure things out. You figure it out, and you have a degree, though the student loans will probably haunt me until I'm in my 60s. Story 56. That if you don't shave, guys can see your pubic hair through yoga pants. I was in a car with my former boss, and he was talking about he didn't want his future daughters to wear yoga pants because they're so tight you can even see if a woman shaves or not. Up to that point, I had no idea. Also, I still wear yoga pants. I don't care how tight they are. They're comfortable. I won't wear leggings as pants, though, too far. Story 57, when I started coming out of friends and family as trans, and most had the same, yeah, we had our suspicions because of XY, and Z WTF, I've been driving myself crazy for years. You could have said something. Story 58, nobody taught me how to do taxes at school, how to open a bank account, and how to become an adult. Moving out in a few months, and I've never been this scared before. Lots of being dumped on me, and people expecting me to just go along with it. Story 59, that you can be sensitive to an ingredient in toothpaste, and that was causing the horrible little white sores in my mouth. Lived with them for decades and neglected my teeth because I hated brushing. When I had sores, they'd heal up. I'd start brushing again, and they'd come back. Dentist always asked if I chewed tobacco or smoked, thinking that was causing it. But I guess they never believed me when I said no, because they never mentioned that it might be my toothpaste. Switched to Sensodyne a few years ago after randomly hearing that Egoraptor from Game Grumps went through the same thing, and it changed my life. Now I'm desperately trying to make up for years of poor dental hygiene. Story 60, I thought that Kansas City, Missouri were two completely different cities nowhere near each other. I recently discovered that they're essentially the same city, just divided by a state line. Story 61, I had never heard of or tried Nutella until I was in my late 20s. Seriously, no one mentioned Nutella to me in any context for nearly 30 years. Sometimes makes me wonder if there's something else out there like that, or bacon, that is amazing, relatively common, but that I've somehow missed out on. Story 62, aluminum and plastic wrap have little cuts on the ends of the box that can easily be pushed in and holds the roll in place rather than being yanked out of the box when pulling off a length. I said pulling off. Anyway, I was about 30 when I learned that. Story 63, that soft-boiled eggs are delicious. Made some for the first time a week ago and peeled off the skin. The yolk was perfect. Put the eggs in some rice and black beans with hot sauce. God. Story 64, I'm not sure how common this is, but until I was 15 or 16, I didn't know as females had 2 holes down their 3. Technically, more specifically, I did not know that the hole that is the vaginal canal existed. When I got my period at 10 years old, my stepmom gave me a tampon to see if I was able to put it in. So imagine my pain when I tried to insert it in my urethra. Story 65, to bring a jacket inside a cave. Caves are cold inside. Even if it's 100 degrees outside, 38 for you Celsius people, the inside of a cave is really cold. Story 66, sometimes there are goings-on and processes in a company that are deliberately inefficient, so that more people get to keep their jobs. If it's your first day and you fix all those things, you're asking to get fired. To be fair, someone did tell me that afterwards. Story 67, when you cook taco shells, you should place them so that the top of the shell is on the pan, basically placing them upside down, not laying flat. Now my tacos are wide open and don't collapse when cooking. Just learned that this week from a cousin. Thanks, cousin. Story 68 was on Skype with a girl, and she came for 3 minutes straight and then passed out. Why did nobody ever tell me my pleasure is pretty much non-existent compared to theirs? Story 69, the guy who thought his landlord was leaving him creepy notes, but whose life was saved when another Redditor correctly identified that it was a carbon monoxide leak. Story 70, no one told me my uncle and his now husband were gay until I was 16. My entire family is open-minded, socially liberal people. No one cares about it at all. Everyone just assumed I knew. I saw my uncle every 5 or so years growing up, so the last time I'd seen him I was 10 or 11. They just said his husband was his best friend. Weird, but I guess times have changed quite a lot in just 10 years. Story 71, I was a few days away from turning 20, and I had a realization. Teenagers are called teenagers because they are ages 13 to 19. I got my book smarts degree in mechanical engineering with 3.4 GPA and a good-paying job, but not so much in other areas. Story 72, asked my dad if I had a prostate. I'm a girl. He overreacted and was appalled. I thought it was something everyone had because I hadn't learned about reproductive tracts yet. I'm still not happy about that whole situation. Story 73, went to a frat party one night, and the next day, everyone at the frat house was laughing at me because I was the loser who wore cargo shorts. Nobody told me throughout the whole party that cargo shorts is the plebe uniform. I haven't been able to bring myself to wear a pair since then. No, I did not join a fraternity. Story 74, that there is a man, you have to be aggressive and make all the moves. I was brought up with an unrealistic fairy tale view on how everything in the dating world works. And not until I realized this in my late 20s did I even start to get action. Wasted my best years frustrated and clueless. Story 75, if you're turning right into an establishment or highway, you take the first entrance. If left, you take the second. My parents never taught me this when I was learning to drive. I guess for most people who pay attention, it's supposed to be obvious, but I only figured out when I was 18. Story 76, how blinds work. Pull string to the right. They stay up, pull to the left, and they go down. My wife made fun of me for a year about not being able to use them before realizing nobody ever told me this. Story 77, my family has a habit of leaving me out of things because I'm the youngest out of everyone. My uncle died when I was around the age of 8, and they told me he was sick. I was about 16 when I overheard another cousin state that she was affected by suicide because our uncle had killed himself. No one ever told me, and to this day, I do not know where or how it occurred, even though my parents still live next door to his house, where his wife still lives. When I was in school, I was doing a course where you have to make extensive and detailed family trees, and I discovered that he, along with numerous other people in my family, experienced severe mental illness. Considering a lot of these things are hereditary, I was deeply upset that I didn't discover this until I was 24. Story 78, good introductions. First impressions are as easy as a firm handshake, eye contact, and pronouncing your name correctly with a rise and a fall. This is more important than most courses I took in my first 2 years of college, and in no one said a thing. Story 79, my first credit card had a $700 limit. I thought that whatever you spent throughout the month had to be paid back by the end of the month. Like if I spent $60 on my credit card, I better have $60 at the end of the month. At first I started using it for gas, but it became frustrating because I found it to just be more of a hassle than anything. I would sometimes forget, and then would suddenly realize I needed to pay $75 in a few days, and I would be like, God damn it, I'm just going to use my debit card from here on out. I thought this was how you built credit. I had no idea how credit cards actually worked until my girlfriend explained it to me after hearing me complain about the uselessness of credit cards. Story 80, that you can fall out of love with your spouse and then find the love again. Marriage is a bit cyclical if you stay through the difficult bits. Also, do not for any reason look in a full body length mirror at your naked body at 3 hours postpartum, closest to suicidal I've ever been. That I'm not pregnant, I'm just fat and my body is ruined. Feeling is horrible, so empty and sad. Story 81, this is not me who wasn't told, but my friend. I moved earlier this year and had to tell my best friend I was moving. The only day where I knew I could say it to him without tearing up happened to be April Fool's Day. I told everyone else already because they weren't as hard to tell, and he didn't figure out it was real till another one of his friends mentioned it one day. Story 82, when the work car I bought, a Geo Metro hatchback BTW, guy didn't tell me when you pull the brake the headlights shut off if they're on high beams. So I was flying home one night on a dirt road and came to a real sweet turn and set it, pulled the e-brake and went blind, cut the wheel as hard as I could and held on, and did a couple donuts like I won the Daytona and stopped. When I let the brake down, the lights came on, and seen I was a short trip away from going over the mountain for a wilder ride. Story 83, I play League of Legends. My favorite champions are Annie and Shaun. I was playing yesterday with my friend, and when I died, I clicked to go to the shop. He was like, you can still control Tibbers. How did I not know that Tibbers became Mini Shaun? My mind was blown. Story 84, when I found out the mitotic index didn't apply to the context of my experiment. You could have told me when I suggested it to you. Mr. Supervisor, basically anything to do with adult life. What do you mean I have to take set classes? What, this tax wasn't there last year? Why does the pizza get darker instead of warmer after 30 minutes? Story 85, TLDR. I gringo got stuck with my son in the U.S., while my wife and the babies are in Mexico City because I didn't have a note from mommy that it's okay to bring the kids to Mexico. Moved to Mexico with family from the U.S., flew up to Laredo, Texas with my oldest son to get the family forward, cross the border, go south, and hit the migration. They tell me he can't enter without a note from his mother. I say that mom is in Mexico, DF. He says no names, cabron, sort of, and then tells me if fax won't work. We go back across the border. The U.S. Customs people don't like my story and take us in the car around back and put the Ford Explorer up on a lift and spend 45 minutes taking off all of the plastic panels that they could find. Nice. We go back to the hotel to find a fax machine landline. Call mom, and she heads to the U.S. Embajada in Mexico, DF. The power goes out. We go to a new hotel. I tell her another fax, and we finally get a fax permission. We recross to Mexico, back to migration. The same pinch Mammon de Jueva is still there 8 hours later. I am dodging around in line to get to a different window. This dude doesn't care, and we're allowed into Mexico. I get into the office on Monday, and every single person says, oh yeah, gringo, you have to get a note from mommy. But no one told me until I spent a full day stuck in Laredo, Texas, not a tourist destination.